today on my podcast, I am going to be, what are you grateful for today?
Well, I'm grateful that I'm alive because I had a few near misses when I was in a bad place. I'm grateful that I now can control that dark tunnel that exists around me, and and I think most of us have that issue. I've learnt to control that with the help of my family and my daughters, and obviously my counselling, and very good friends. I've changed my life totally around. I've gone from being a boxing promoter to a high-profile trans woman to just a woman living her life the way she wants to live it now.
Yeah. What do you do to maintain kind of your mental health? I'm very big on routine, especially on my morning routine. Really strict about that. What's your routine? Do you have any specific routine?
I don't sort of live by routine. I live in organised chaos, but because I do have 3 very large dogs, I have to get up every morning, and I have a hot lemon and ginger and honey.
Oh, it's one of my favourite drinks.
Then I'll walk the dogs anything up to an hour, or depending on if it's hot or what the weather's like. I'll walk the dogs. I'll come back. I'll let my chickens and my guinea fowl, my turkey out, and I'll check they're all right. And then I'll normally do an hour's workout. And on a Wednesday, I have 4 clients that I do one-to-one personal training with, and I have a client in the UK that I do training with over the WhatsApp or FaceTime. And then I potter around a little bit. Then I may go for coffee and meet some people, or I just go into the little village and sit there and watch the world go by. And then,
it sounds like you've got a pretty good life going on.
Yeah, I do still work. I mean, it's saying, so like I check all my emails and I respond to everything as well. But I can do that sitting in the cafe, so that's why I like it.
Yeah, exactly. What training do you do these days? Do you still hit the pads? Do you do any boxing?
I do. I still manage a female boxer. I actually manage a couple of boxers, but one is active at the moment. But obviously, with the virus, everything's very hard, so it's like a little bit still. Personally, I work on the punch bag, and I do a few boxing exercises in my own routine. Yeah.
Good. Let's talk about your transition, Kelly. Because for you, it was a long time coming. I said to you before I pressed record today that I'd read your book, and I devoured that in 2 sittings. I thought it was incredible, and it certainly opened my eyes up a lot. I'll be honest, I knew very little about the trans community, and it opened my eyes to the inside turmoil.
I think it depends. Everything changes. Like now, everyone knows so much about the gender dysphoria, and there's so much help out there. There's so much advice. Some is good, some is bad, but there's help there, and people are more acceptant of it. Though there is at this moment is crazy sort of backlash and attack from the right-wing press and right-wing people and certain feminist groups that are very anti-trans women. But overall, there's a lot more help, and a lot more advice and guidelines. When I was very young, there was none of that. And to be honest, I knew I was different, but I didn't know what I was different about, and I didn't know why I was different. I knew I was never gay because I never was attracted to boys, or if I'm honest, I wasn't attracted to girls either. And I was brought up in a very macho family, very working class, Irish dad, very sport-minded, and with 2 brothers. And it was very competitive. Our father liked us to really take part in lots of sports and watch sport. we were never allowed to help my mum in the house, which was crazy. You know, my father would go, "That's a woman's job. My boys don't do things like that." You know, and today, you know, my father, up until he got to his 60s, maybe even a little bit, he'd never made a cup of tea. You know, never boiled an egg. But then all of a sudden, he started being able to get up and do his own breakfast, and I'm like, oh, the world's changing. My mum and my dad broke up. My dad went through both my parents went through a bad stage of depression because they couldn't handle the breakup. And then my dad came sort of back into my life. Well, and he'd met a woman, and I think this other woman helped my dad. My mum, again, was very old, traditional mum from an Irish family. It was her job to look after the family, to make sure the dinner was on the table. And I think the new woman that my dad met, she was slightly different.
Yeah.
My dad was a little bit more. She was more, yeah, well, let's go out, let's do this, let's eat out. You know, my dad started eating out more. But I think for the first time, he started flying as well. You know, life, you know, and it is great that you live through all these different changes in your lifetime. You know, my age now, I would have thought when I was young, my age, you were old, you was on your way out. But now I still think very young.
I know, I'm literally 48 now, and I just think, God, where have the years gone? And I remember when I was younger, you'd look at, it's different now though. Well, I think we just think it's different to when we were younger, because when we were younger, looking at people our age, you'd think they were like really, really old.
If I use my real age, you're ancient. But I know my age from transitioning, so I'm only 6.
Yeah, that's true. You just mentioned that you came from quite a traditional family, like your dad was traditional and your mum was traditional. Yet when you decided to live within your truth and tell your family about it, you were really surprised about the way that she responded. She responded absolutely incredibly and accepted everything. And I just kind of wonder, have you ever thought if you'd maybe told your father? Because there was so many people when you kind of, told them about your transition and what had been going on over the years, that you thought may have responded a certain way, but they didn't. They responded very positively. Have you ever thought that maybe your dad might have been one of those people? Has that thought ever crossed your mind?
Still does today. I mean, I know my father passed away in 2009. And if I'm honest, or 2010, it might, I can't remember. No, 2010, it was 10 years today, this year. I often lay in bed at night and, I think, and I actually speak to my dad. I know that might sound crazy. And I ask him, and I just say, Dad, I hope you understand what I went through. I hope you're as proud as me as you was as proud of Frank. And I mean, I never get a response, so I never know what his answer is. But I don't know. My mother says he would never have understood. My brother, who's just started talking to me after 10 years, because he couldn't accept when I first transitioned, he has said my dad wouldn't understand. My other brother also says my dad wouldn't understand. And my dad's ex-partner, before she passed away, she said my father would never have accepted me or understood it, because she never did either. She could never accept why I transitioned. Not that I saw much. Once my father passed away, I'll be honest, I never saw much of her, because my mother was alive, and to me she was my father's companion and partner, and I had a lot of respect for her because of the way she looked after my dad through his illness and everything else. But when my dad passed away, for me, there was no reason for me other than, if I did see her, to be polite and well-mannered to her, because her links with my family or with me, I felt were over, because my mum was still alive. And
you felt that loyalty to your mum.
I just felt disrespect my mum. My children went and saw her because they called her Nanny too, or whatever. And I had no problems with that. But I did sort of have problems with her trying to sort of, because she was my dad's wife. I use the word muscle in and try and be my my children's grandparents, because she never had no children. She was 4, so she never had no children. But to me, my mum was alive, so I could never ever accept that. And I used to have to tell her, look, you're not my children's grandmother. You're a step relation to them. It's very much like today. People say my children disrespect me because they call me daddy when we're out in public. And I go, no, they don't disrespect me. That is, I am their dad, biologically dad, and they have a mother. So how can I disrespect the mother of my children, which I don't? I'm very friendly with my 2 ex-wives, which is very nice. And we talk, we've been out for meals all together, we see each other. I'm much closer to Tracy than I am to Emma's mum, because obviously that was very long time ago. But only last week I went out to dinner with Emma and her mum. And I just think that's nice. And I think they must wonder, how did we never know about this when we was married to this person? And I don't know if they did know, or if they had any sort of inkling. If they did, they will never say they did. But I think there was little signs, but not enough signs to make people worry. Because sometimes, I remember once my daughter went to me, "Why are you sitting so early, like?" And I didn't realise I was doing that. And I said, "Oh, I was just daydreaming." As soon as anyone, I was very much into making sure that I was seen as very macho. And I think that was a lot of the problems. One of the reasons a lot of the comments that I made, which were quite outrageous in certain times and offences, I hold my hands up to that, but it was all like you build a defence in front of you, build a brick wall around you. And that was the way I done it, by being this arrogant little horrible man. I used to think I was a very nice man, but people told me I wasn't.
Well, I'm sure you were. I'm sure there was nice sides to you back then. That's for sure. And we all go through stages when saying things that we shouldn't, and especially, I guess, for yourself being in the public eye. It's, I don't know. It must have been just a very bizarre experience for you.
When I was growing up, and I was always taught, because I was in the boxing business from a very early age, and I was taught by some very good teachers. That's why I think I was quite good at the job. And told, remember this: no press is bad press. And what's in the papers today is tomorrow's chip paper. But yes, they were right in them days. But you forget the internet came along and the web.
Exactly.
Said, or you put out there. I can go back on the internet and put up stuff that I said, and I read them and I think, how the hell did I ever say that? That's not me. But it was me at that time, So people out there, never follow the teachings that I was brought up on. It's not paper tomorrow. It's on the internet forever.
When you first when you retired from boxing, really you had 2 very significant events in your life. When you transitioned and then you retired from a career that you loved for many years that you loved. How did you navigate your way through that? Because just retiring in itself from a profession is, along with that comes a lot of feelings of grief and a lot of loss. So you not only did you have that to contend with, you had your, the transition as well.
Well, I knew transitioning that I couldn't stay in the business. Well, and now I go back, I think maybe I could have stayed in the business, but I had lost a little bit of interest.
Yeah.
If I'm I lost the love for it. It's a bit like what you just said. You think you've overstayed your welcome where you are based now. I think you can like football managers. I think they can always overstay their welcome at football clubs, or a chief executive. Because, and I just felt that I was coming to the end. But I always entered boxing, and I always used to say this to everybody in my team: remember, one day this is all going to end. It doesn't matter how it's going to end, but it's going to end. you know, Lennox Lewis's career is going to come to an end. You could fall out with Lennox Lewis. Another fighter might come along, but the careers are short. So mentally, I'm quite strong mentally. I think I am, you know, on certain aspects I am. And I mentally prepared myself for it to come to an end. And I think, obviously, David Price losing his last 2 fights was fine. May have been the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because obviously, David Price was my golden goose at the time and was the one that kept my TV contract going. And losing 2 fights on the trot by knockouts is not the greatest way to renegotiate a contract. I had good young fighters, but the terms wouldn't have been as good. And I really, because on the second David Price fight, I did not want the rematch. And that's a well-known fact by everybody. I tried so hard to talk David out of the rematch, but David and his team insisted on it with his legal advice.
Interesting that, because that you didn't want that. That's not yet you. Well, the impression I got from the book was that you didn't want it, but you were too tired to like argue about it. You were, you know, it was almost like you'd lost that kind of passion to like say, right, this is what I want. But really, in retrospect, maybe if you'd gone the route you had, it might have been a different outcome there. But I don't know. Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
What people don't realise was I actually was transitioning, but I was living a double life at this stage. I was living as Kelly part of the time, and I was living as Frank, and I was actually on hormones. I was quite emotional, more than I'd ever been in my life, and I also think that also affected all my judgment and everything. Not that I'm saying women can't be successful in business, because that's not what I'm trying to. What I'm saying is, I was like, there was 2 people pulling inside me. There was the side that I wanted to be and I wanted to let out, and there was the side that was trying. There was the Frank that was trying to keep Kelly out of my life forever. I would lose my family. I feared I would lose everything. But you know, Kelly was a strong personality, and she thankfully she did come through in the right way in the end. And I just realised I couldn't go on, because the 2 people fighting would have killed me. I would have, you know, often I'd sat there and thought about suicide, you know, and it's been a known fact that I've attempted suicide a couple of times, 3 times, I think, overall. 4 times, but one was just for help. I did it the first one. I honestly admit to that. It was just for attention and help. But and I just felt I can't do this, because if I don't come to terms with myself, if I don't face myself and accept myself, no one will ever accept me. And I'm going to grow old, miserable. If I grew old, that was, you know, you don't know what was around the corner. And I'd lost my love for the sport, you know. I just didn't have that drive and that passion that I had right up till. I suppose it also we've got to step back from David Price as well. I also lost a very great fighter that I had great hopes for, and I really knew could be a world champion, who I found had committed suicide eventually, or they killed themselves, because the Irish boy. And I actually had a heart attack after that, and I was in hospital. And I actually signed David Price while I was in hospital in my bed, just after my heart operation. If I had signed David Price then, I would have resigned from boxing anyway, because Darren Sutherland thing really, and I haven't really spoken about this, but because I've had lots of times, I started looking back at things and trying to analyse my life and why things change in someone's life, and that was it. And again, I go back a bit further as well. I had a great little fighter in Paul Ingalls, who I had utmost respect for too. There was Paul Ingalls and Scott Harrison. And both of them cases ended in tragedy. And so my love and my passion was beginning to fade anyway. And every time it faded, I don't know how it happened, like Darren Sutherland came into my life. So it picked me up and went, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden, the tragedy happened with Darren Sutherland, and I want to get out. But then I get the phone call, David Price is willing to sign a contract you've offered him, which was before I found Sutherland. So I'm now in a situation where, okay, I'm going to sign the contract. Well, David Price will keep me going. And that, but there was nothing, I had never prepared for after David Price, because I just felt now, I honestly felt after the first Thompson fight, after I came out to Tracy, after my father's death, I knew there was, no going back, because the counsellor told me, once I took the lid off the Pandora box, you don't put on that box. And I'd done that. And I just wanted to live as the real me, to be honest, and I don't think the boxing world at that time would have been very accepting of me. I don't think they are today, but some are and some aren't. I saw some of the tweets, I saw some of the social media, I saw some of the recordings by top promoters in boxing, which have since disappeared because we've looked for them for one of the documentaries and they've mysteriously disappeared. Obviously, we pulled down.
Interesting.
So
it's interesting what people say, like to the media, what they should say, and possibly maybe what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
they're pulling stuff down.
And I don't think I think I needed that break. I think I'd burnt all my fuel, and I was on another journey. I was on a journey to discover myself, and to me that was more important than being a top boxer.
Yeah, and it sounds like what you've experienced, what you experienced within boxing, it's probably really helped. What's the word to use? Prepare you for what you were to experience. With the transition, like the likes of dealing with Don King, for example, who you would do anything that you could to discredit you, and all the difficulties that you had around that. And, you've got to be made of pretty tough stuff to deal with all of that rubbish.
I'm very lucky. I'm mentally, in certain aspects, I say I'm very strong. I think I'm very emotional, which I never was. I was emotional as Frank, but not as emotional as I am now. And I do blame the hormones. So if females don't, that's the one thing I honestly. And my daughters say, why don't you just stop taking those hormone tablets or patches, whatever you're on, because you're too emotional. You cry too much, And I don't know. It's a complete, I look at I remember what my counsellor said to me when I finally said to my counsellor, do you know something? I'm locking, I am going to become my true self. I'm ready to face the world. And she said to me, you know what? She said, Kelly, you've got to look at it like this. She said, you are starting your life all over again. She said, you're going to have to learn to walk, learn to sit, learn to talk, learn to go out. And she said, if you start dating, you're going to have to learn to date again. She said, it's totally different. She said, think of your friends. I said, what do you mean think of my friends? They're not coming on this journey with me. They're not transitioning. She went, no. She said, they're going to be retiring. She said, and they're going to be either playing golf, going out to lunches, sitting in the pub, or gardening. She said, you are going to be living a whole new life and experience something completely new. She said, you don't realise, in a way, how lucky or what you're going to go through. She said, it's going to be a bit of a bumpy road. We all accept that. But if you do come to 100% terms with yourself and you can accept that, she said, you're going to have an amazing life. And you know what? That counsellor was really true and right about it. Because it has been, I have spoken to a few friends who are sort of don't know what they want to do with their lives no more, because they're coming to the end of their working life and they've got no concept of what they want to do. Where I'm still learning and discovering things, my transition was 6 years ago. No, 5 years ago, let's say, maybe 6. I started coming. I started coming out early, but living totally, and being the real me. And I am still learning things today, and it's amazing. It's fantastic, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Yeah, you sound like you're in a good place at the moment. And when you did transition, like you were so worried about what people would say. Well, I think it was more so your family.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, you had a lot of the responsibility and the guilt was, you know, that you wouldn't hurt your family, which I completely understand. And I can't ever begin to think what you must have been going through. Um, but then when you were, you know, on the outside of things, you really were accepted by a lot of people and by your family too, or most of them. That must have been incredibly reassuring for you.
Yeah, you know, as I say, I think I'm very lucky. I think, you know, all of us from the trans community, we fear rejection, we fear losing everything, we fear very much loss of a family. You know, I've met some girls and boys that have transitioned the other way, uh, that have been lost everything. You know, I've also known a couple that were on the same journey as me, but never got to the end of the journey. Unfortunately, they took their lives. Uh, you know, it's a very hard journey. It's a very sad journey, and some of us are very lucky. And I've met some that have got the same life as me, and some have done this journey but live under the radar, shall we say? They've just moved into society and they live a very like what I wanted to do. And I know that if I wasn't Frank Maloney, the boxing promoter, I would have done that because I never had a problem when I started living as Kelly and going out and that. No one bothered me. I never got looked at twice. I never got picked on. I never got um, name called or anything like that. Maybe because I was only 5'2" and I was quite slim, and um, I. But when my story broke, it obviously social media and the idiots, you know, in the world, as I call them, the lager, the keyboard warriors, they decided they could have a. It gave them rights to attack me, and not just me, to attack the trans community, and I'm not a trans activist. I don't want to be an activist. Um, can I just take this call because it's
Yeah,
my lawyer?
sure.
Hello, hello, hello. It's not. No, I don't know what's happened. Hello. No English. Can you? Sorry. Can you phone me back in about 15 minutes, please? I'm in a meeting. Okay. Can you phone me in 15 minutes? I'm in a meeting, and then I can explain. Phone me back in 15 minutes, please. I don't know the call. I'll have to meet them. I'll come back to you. Okay. Thank Katerina. Yeah. Okay. They get. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
What that was. Portuguese, and I don't speak the language.
See, you were saying you don't want to be a trans activist.
No, I don't want to put myself up there on the pulpit. I want to help and support people, and I do help and
Yeah.
support people.
Yeah.
So a lot online, privately. I do one-to-one talking with them. I talk to quite a few parents that children are going through it, but I don't want to be out there, you know, every day, because I also feel sometimes some of us in the trans community, we are our own worst enemies. We may demand too many rights when all, you know, I understand we should have healthcare, and I think that's very important. We should be given the same sort of treatment as anyone else on the national health. You know, it's gender dysphoria is not a mental issue. I do believe it's a medical issue because if it was, we need doctors. You know, I heard Theresa May speaking, saying it wasn't a medical issue, but to me, it is a medical issue because I saw more doctors than anyone during my transitioning. And I do think, you know, we pay our taxes the same as anyone else, so we are entitled to the health care that everyone else should be entitled to. And you know, I'm not saying all the treatment should be on NHS, because not all the treatment is necessary, but there are certain treatments that are very necessary for people like myself, to make their life full and complete. And that sort of treatment should be available, and we shouldn't have to wait 3 or 4 years like the waiting list is and things like that, because that's wrong. Because, you know, I paid as much tax as the next person's to me. You know, I was lucky that I had the money to go private, so I never had to go through I didn't have to jump through all the hoops and jump over all the fences, because I went private. And, you know, I get a few trans people attacking me because of that. Oh, it's all right for her because she had money, you know. But I worked for my money. It wasn't as if I wasn't given money. You know, I didn't just pick it off a tree. I worked for it. I worked even at times when I was really suffering with depression. I still worked and ran my business. You know, I know a few trans people say, "Oh, we can't work because we're in such stress, we're in such pressure." You know, and they want everything. There are certain lines. Like, I've got a friend who transitioned at the same time as me, and her life was made a misery at work. So she had to sign off at work, but she still never went through the NHS. She was saving her money while she was working. She eventually got a financial settlement with the company because of the way they treated her and everything else. But it took a long time, and it took it to show how strong she was to stand up to them people. And I think that's what some of us must learn to do in the trans community: stand up more for our rights and for our protection, but not make enemies. You know, if someone disagrees with me, that's fine. If someone doesn't understand me, that's fine. They're entitled to their opinion. I'm not going to go to war over someone saying I'm still a man, because if they think that, they can think what they like. But you know, I'm not gonna. I'm not sure. You know, I'm not going to respond. I actually think it's better not to respond to anything, because you're giving them better. You're just ignoring them because of their ignorance.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Do you still get depression, Kelly? You know,
sometimes, a couple of weeks ago, I hit a brick wall, and I didn't talk to anybody, and I didn't go out. Eventually, my daughter sort of got me talking again, and she came out to see me, and it really helped me. Yeah, I don't know why, because my life wasn't in a bad place at the time. It just, yeah, I do say that I live with this dark tunnel around, and every so often I slip into this tunnel. Well, not every so often, thank heavens. Now and again, but as long as I can see that light, I can pull my way out. When you go further into the tunnel, like I did in October 2018, when I couldn't see no light, and that's when I had a really, really bad, and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital here in Portugal, and I think that might have scared me as well. And I realised since then that I could never go in a place like that again. So it has helped me. So I think I've learned to control my depressions a bit more better now, and it helped with the dogs. I realise, I know this sounds silly, but if anything happened to me, who's going to look after 3 bloody monsters that?
I'd have them. I absolutely love dogs, but yeah.
We're family. The dogs and me are family.
Of course. Yeah.
You know, Turkey and me are family. So I've changed my life around in that way, and you know, I'm not going to say I'm never going to go into that dark tunnel, because, as I said, I started slipping in there about a couple of weeks ago, but I managed to get out of it not as quick as I got in there, but I managed, because it was something very, very special to me, and I wanted to get out there because I know where I went before, and I don't want to go. I don't want to go to that place again.
You meditate? Do you visualize and meditate?
Not as much as I should do. I'm not great at holding my concentration. I'm an active person.
Mm.
I would go in the gym more than I would meditate, to be honest.
Yeah, I think with anything, it's just a matter of practice. Being able to still your mind. Obviously, the first few times you do it, it's not going to be easy. But the more you practice, like the easier it gets.
Yeah.
I do guided meditations. I'll send you some through. I do them. I release them on my podcast. So I'll send you some. I mean, they're only short ones, so they're great as a starter. Yeah, just for like 15, 20 minutes or so. And they all incorporate breathing as well. So I like,
breathing properly, yes.
yeah, I just think, if you do a little bit of breath work before you meditate, or before you still your mind, it just kind of primes your body for kind of relaxation, and it gets all that energy flowing, all that stagnant energy. As a guy, I'm sure you've heard of Wim Hof, yeah, Iceman.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried any of his guided breathings? He's got some on YouTube. He's got a longer one for about 40 minutes, but he's got a short one for 11 minutes. And I'm telling you, they're absolutely incredible. They're amazing. Definitely, if you've not tried them, it's definitely worth maybe giving them a go.
Send me the link. I'll have a look at them.
I will do. Kelly, I'm keen to know what your view is on transsexuals, men who have transitioned to women playing professional sport. Right. This is not something you don't want to answer, because I know it's quite a sensitive thing.
Answer it. I'm a great believer that sport is open to everybody. I'm a great believer the sport should be a level playing field. I honestly believe it depends. I don't think someone who's just starting their transitioning should be allowed to compete in women's sport. I don't think that's fair. But I believe it depends how far they've transitioned, depends how far the level of testosterone is when it's measured. And more to the point, you go by I don't think women's box. There are certain sports that women and men can't compete against each other. And I also think you'll never see women and men competing against each other. And maybe there are certain sports that trans women shouldn't be allowed to compete. One could be boxing, because listening to some of the medical advice, they say that we still maintain that. But I can only speak about myself. I know I'm a lot weaker than I was. I know I'm not as strong as I was. My endurance is not as good as it was, but maybe as well, that's a little bit of age with me as well. So, but to me, there's not been enough medical research into this. There's too many people who don't know what they're talking about, just jumping on the bandwagon. And one is Sharon Davis, the swimmer. She, when I will not make a full and honest comment other than I believe sport is open to everybody. It should be a level playing field. And the trans people that are in sport are not breaking no rules. They're following the rules of the governing body. So again, the argument is not with us trans people, it's with the governing bodies. So leave us alone and have your argument with the governing bodies. Sharon Davis moans because she was beaten by an East German that was on testosterone. That person who beat Sharon Davis was not a trans woman. It was a woman that the East German, because it was an East German at the time, and we all know what the East Germans done. They were pumping their females full of testosterone to make them stronger, to more determined. So their level was even greater than probably most men's was. So, and it was a long time ago. So let's Sharon Davis get this right. She has never been beaten by a trans woman. Name to me any trans women that have really excelled in sport. There's none. There's none. This great fear that everyone's going to all of a sudden want to be a woman just to compete in sport is crazy. So until the full medical reports are done, and as long as we as trans people follow the governing rules of the bodies, the sport that we're taking part in, we're not breaking no rules.
Think about younger people transitioning. I mean, you can have a sex change from the, age of 18. And I know there's a friend of mine, she's my best friend. I was a bridesmaid. Her daughter dated a guy. I don't know all the details, but I believe he went through the transition and then he regretted it and wanted to go back. What do you think about this happening when someone's, when they're really young? Do you know?
Again, there are certain guidelines that we all have to follow. This is, you can go to war at 18, you can vote at 18. You're technically an adult at 18. 18 is, most people at the age of 18 have their mind made up what they want to do. So to me, at 18, to me that is the choice of the individual. If they really believe they're trans, they've got trans dysphoria and they want to transition. That's not. But again, they won't exactly transition dead at 18. They still have to go through all the loopholes through the journey, see the right people. You are going to get one or two people who, the grass always looks greener on the other side. So you may get one or two people that may have think they're either a lesbian or a gay man, but they think, no, we're not. We're really a woman, or we're really a man, and they want to transit. And then when they transition, they realise they're not. I can never use the names because my counsellor never told me, but a counsellor I was seeing, she was seeing a guy from the Middle East who was living with his partner who was Middle East. His family would not accept him because they were two men, and in their community, gays are not accepted. But he was under the impression that if he transitioned, his family would accept him because he'd be a woman. And his family, and when he told his family this, the family said yes. But what he doesn't realise is, by transitioning, his partner wasn't in love with a woman. He was in love with a man because his partner's gay. So if he transitioned, the counsellor's trying to tell him, your partner may not be in love with you anymore. Mm-hmm. That is not the answer. So I don't believe people should transition very young in age, but I also believe that if a young child believes they're born in the wrong body, I have talked to a few parents who said to me, and I would say, look, I'm not a doctor, so I can only tell you what I would do. And my philosophy would be, I would just say, okay, just continue normal. If they've got a boy who wants to put a dress on, but don't make a big fuss about it. Don't put that on him. Just let them do it and then move on with the day. It's all about support, care and love to me for someone that's young. That person will find, if they're really transgender, that will not go away. So when they get to a bit older, 18, 19, and then they go on that journey of transitioning. I'm not an expert in it, so I can't be. I can only tell what I know, and I think that if you look back, there's a lot of self-harm. The transgender community have the biggest rate of suicide and attempted suicide than any other group in society. So there must, all I know is that I'm a much better person since I've transitioned. So for me, it was the right thing to do. And I'm sure there's much more people who are a lot more happy than regret transitioning because it's been, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I guess when you're younger, there's just the whole identity thing, like I'm a different person now to what I was when I was 18. And I think we all go through those maybe identity crises when we're younger.
I mean, how many genders are there out there now? I can't keep up with the different genders and I don't understand them. I honestly don't understand them. There's gender neutral, gender queer, there's two spirits, there's gender drag. I know someone that it depends how they wake up in the morning, depends if they're a man or woman. So, I was brought up to believe there was only two genders, and there was, shall we say, free sexualities and bisexual. So 4. But when I say 2 genders, there was 3. There was intersex. There's always been intersex, which is slightly because I've met a couple of people that are intersex as well, and that's very hard because their sexuality is chosen by the doctor at their birth.
So, what's intersex?
Sex is where they're born with both.
Both genitalia, right? Okay, got you. Knowing what you know now, what would you say to your younger self? Knowing what you know now.
I think I would have said to my younger self, do you know what? You've got to be brave. You've got to face yourself, and you can live a really a good life. Yeah, and if I went back on my life, would I transition earlier? Part of me would say yes, and part of me say no, because I've been very lucky with the love of my children. So if I had transitioned early, I wouldn't have had my children in my life. So it's a very hard question, but I think I might have said to my younger self, you know what, you've got to be brave. You've got to face the truth. That way, you may not cause it or upset as many people. Because I know this journey wasn't just about me. This journey was about my partners that I left behind and my children. So they've had to go on a journey and rediscover everything. So it's not just about, transgender people who think it's all about them are very selfish people. It's not just about you. It's about family. It's about everything. And you have to look at all that. At the end of the day, you still have to go on your journey because I had to. So but you have to look at the destruction, the consequences, and final outcome.
Kind of can empathize with people now, whereas before I didn't feel like I could. Until you've experienced it, you don't really get it. It's like until you experience loss and grief. Before I'd lost my granddad, I didn't really get it when people were grieving. I'd go through the motions and say I'm sorry, but now I know. So, but I guess what I'm getting to is, when you do have, like a couple of weeks ago, you had a bit of a dip and a low time. It's just really important to focus on what you have got in your life, and you have got such a wonderful, loving family around you. You've got your dogs who rely on you as well, but you've also got your kids, and in many ways, God, you're in such a blessed position to have that. And there's so many people haven't got that. And like yourself says, so many transgender gone through the whole process feeling really, really lonely and not having that support as well.
Yeah, I know. And it's hard for them. And, my heart goes out to them people. And, I just don't know. And it's all about, society. As I said, I don't expect everyone to understand or like me. But what I do is expect people to respect me the same as I respect most other forms of human life. Because we're all different. The world is not black and white the way I thought it was, but the way I grew up. The world is black, grey. There's a very big grey area, and white. And there's also a few multicolours out there.
Mm. You've experienced so much in your life, Kelly. Is there anything else that you haven't experienced? Any goals or any future ambitions that you would like to work towards?
One thing, if I'm honest, the one thing that I think about is I had a very loving relationship with my partner. Obviously, when I transitioned, that relationship came to an end. And I wonder, and I mentally prepared myself that I would live the rest of my life alone and just have a nice social life, which I have got. So, and as I said, my ex-partners are very friendly with me. But I probably wonder, will I ever meet anyone that I will share my life with? Yeah. Or will I always be Kelly Maloney, the person that's invited to the dinner party and they're sitting there, chatting with everybody, very friendly socially, but not have a partner?
Yeah.
That's probably that's the thing that worries. And I though I say that I built my life, I positioned myself, that's what's going to be my life. I don't say never. I do say if I walk into a room, I walk into somewhere, and the light goes on in my head, and that person connects with me, then I would pursue that relationship and see how it
Mm.
ended up.
Yeah, it's funny. I said a similar thing recently about my life because I'm single and I don't have kids, and I've obviously I would love to have children. So I kind of maybe experienced a bit of a loss there. But one thing that I do, and it might be useful for yourself to do this, is kind of visualization and meditations. And like when you're in that, it's like living the event as though living the event as though it's already happened. So this is something that I do a lot of when I'm being still and I'm meditating. And the important thing is to feel the emotion of the event. So it's like, how would you feel with your partner, you know, when you're experiencing that love? A lot of scientific research being undertaken by the likes of Dr. Joe Dispenza. We can change like the neural pathways in our brain to kind of elicit events that we do want. And when you marry the emotion with the event,
But you haven't got that companion, say at night when you're sitting here and you want to chat with someone. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. I could even think about that because I'm very much in conversation with people, and I believe if the person can't stimulate my mind, they're not going to stimulate my body. So there's no point in me having that emotion.
Mm, mm. It is very, very powerful. I'm not sure how long we've been chatting for now, but I just want to ask you a couple of questions about boxing. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is, do you ever think that the heavyweight division, because when you were involved in boxing, it was just incredible in the 90s, and it's never ever got back to that. Do you think it's ever going to get back to that, how it
Again,
was?
similar to what I said earlier, you can only live in the eras you live in.
Mm,
Heavyweight boxers from then are different to heavyweight boxers today. You know, people say that when I lived, but I never lived in the era of Muhammad Ali, Joe
mm,
Frazier, Larry Holmes, people like that. So it just goes in phases. So I'm obviously going to be honest and think that I lived in the best era of heavyweights. And, you know, and boxing then was a lot better.
mm,
I'm not a great lover of boxing now the way it's gone because I think it's lost its magnitude. It's more like producing shows for TV.
mm,
That's what I believe in now, you know, especially with this virus because nothing can happen at the moment. You know,
mm.
no promoter, no boxer unless he's with one of the big two can get any work.
I know Dana. I don't know if you follow the UFC, but Dana White's over here in Abu Dhabi at the moment on Fight Island, and I mean, that guy is just such a grafter, such a worker. But I know they're having fights, you know, over there.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not people are actually going to see them. I'd probably not. I'm not so sure.
Dana White is a very clever guy. He completely the UFC is totally run different to boxing.
Mm,
Fighters are signed to UFC, where boxers are not signed to boxing organisations.
mm-hmm. What would you like your legacy to be when you're no longer here? What would you like people to say about you?
I don't know. Yeah, I've never thought about that. Honestly don't know. I've never really, you know, I make jokes about it, but I've never really, on a serious note, I've never thought about it. My legacy is what I leave behind.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I can't make my legacy. It's what people think of me. I will
Mm,
always be known as the first English manager to produce an undisputed heavyweight champion in the world in 100 years. I will be known as the first boxing promoter to transition openly. I honestly don't know. You know, I might be known for other bad things and other good things. But, you know, as long as I can put my head on the pillow at night and know that I can sleep with myself and wake up in the morning and lay straight in bed, what I think a lot of people can't do, in the boxing world and in other worlds. I'm happy with myself.
Yeah, that's incredible. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. I certainly think you're an inspiration, and I think so many other people out there do as well. Would you say that you found inner peace?
Yes. But I'm at peace with myself now, and I'm very contented with myself. I'm not going to say that I don't have down moments, because I do, but 99% of my life now is totally at peace with myself.
That's
And
good.
it's a nice place to be.
And I truly think when you're at that place, that's when everything that you want in your life is gonna come. So let's watch this space.
Careful about letting someone in my life, because I also, another thing my counsellor told me, that I've always never let negative people into your life.
Yeah.
I did let a couple of people into my life, and as I say, in 2018 I nearly killed myself over an issue. I thought I'd met someone not long ago. Again, it wasn't the right person.
Mm.
But that's not to me. My daughter said it's right. My oldest daughter said to me, "Remember this, Dad, something you always told us. You don't need anyone in your life, but you'd like someone in your life." And I think if I keep to that philosophy, I'm going to be fine.
100%. And I think when these situations or relationships don't work out, it's just kind of paving the way for the next one or the right person to come into your life.
You learn from everyone, don't you? You learn from all your mistakes. That's what I believe in.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for being a guest today. And I really appreciate you taking the time out.
That's right. Will you send me the link when you put it up?
I will do, definitely. So it'll probably come out around about Monday next week. And I'll send you the link. And the little snippets. I get little videos done and little snippets, little audiograms done as well.
All right then. Thank you very much.